Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today we had the first day of racing at the World Championships and man, what a day of racing we had. Two great races. With me here to talk about it is Tom.
Hello.
Twan.
Hello.
And Issam.
Hey everybody.
We'll start off by talking about the women's race, which had a great battle between three riders, but not the three riders we expected in the beginning. It was Worst who fought hard with Brandt and Betsema, and Twan will tell us exactly about what happened in that race.
So it was a nervous start with Alvarado already crashing in the first corner, also taking out Twan and Cant, and going up the bridge there were already quite a few gaps. It was Betsema who had a very good sand section and put some more distance in between her and Brandt, with Alvarado already more than 10 seconds behind, and the second sand section added some more time to this, and it was Betsema over start finish that had 7 seconds on Lucinda Brandt, 15 on Worst, and 25 on Alvarado. And Alvarado would never be able to close any of these gaps and would not be in a fight for a podium or even world title here. Worst is able to return on the second lap up the bridge to the wheel of Lucinda Brandt, going through start finish at the third lap. They have a 10-second gap to Betsema, so a few seconds added there, but it is Annemarie Worst with a phenomenal sand section, and she is able to close the gap to Denise Betsema, but the next sand section coming off the pier, she crashes and leaves Brandt and Betsema out in front. Worst is able to close the gap though in the fourth lap, and going into the final lap, we have three Dutch women together. The podium is decided, but the order definitely isn't. It is Denise Betsema who makes a mistake off the bridge into the sand section and is left off the back of the other two women, and she would never return. It would be a bronze medal for her after a significant lead early in the race, and it is a battle between Brandt and Worst for the world title here. Worst having to leave a small gap in the sand section, but is able to return on the bridge, and as they went into the hippodrome, it was Brandt putting on the pressure. Sometimes Worst was on a bike length here, but she was able to battle back in, and they went side by side into a corner. Worst not quite able to keep line as they touched a little there, and it would be Brandt that comes home for the World Championships, and Worst with a beautiful ride into second place with, as I said earlier, Betsema taking third.
Well, the first question we really need to answer here is, where did Worst find this form? Because really nothing this season indicated that this was coming.
Yeah, I think Worst just peaking at the exact right moment, also doing something that she hasn't done all season, and that is right well in the sand. Truly phenomenal at some points in the course today.
Well, Worst also really rode much better in the sand than we expected. She hadn't really done that before, especially in that section coming down from the bridge. She was really rocking that, probably the fastest out of everyone. Do you think that it was perhaps the combination of the motivation together with the parkour that suited her that also helped her overperform, Tom?
Well, I think obviously we had the crash in the start, and yeah, she suddenly found herself kind of in a really good position right away, in the right frame of mind. Again, peaking at the right time. If you suddenly get into this good position, you're in contention for the world title, and you can dig that bit deeper, find a bit more form. And yeah, last year in Dubendorf as well, she rode similar, and yeah, second there and second here again. And yeah, if it wasn't for the coming together or on the final lap, it could have been another sprint finish.
We'll come back to talk about that incident later on in this podcast. We'll start off analyzing this race at the beginning where it was Betsema who quickly opened a gap of 15 seconds. What were you guys thinking at that point? Were you guys thinking this is race over, Betsema takes the title?
Yeah, I sent you that message, and it literally said, just pack your bags, it's one of those days. Denise Betsema is on one leg, she was in Beringen, for example, and no one is going to see her the rest of the race.
I have to admit, I thought the same at that point. I mean, yes, 10 to 15 seconds isn't a lot on a parkour like this. It's 1 or 2 mistakes. But Betsema was flying through those sand sections. And at that point, it looked like a point of no return. Betsema was on a flyer and she looked to be gone.
Yeah, well, like you said, she was flying in the sand sections in the first lap. But it seems that the further we went in the race, she was making a little bit more mistakes in the sand. And, if you're losing time on your best parts of that race, and that was actually, she was the best in the sand. If you're going to lose time on that section, that means that they will gain on you on the other section. And Brandt and Vorst were extremely strong overall in the whole on the whole parkour. And I think that Betsema was only very strong on the sand and also in the climbing in the beginning. But yeah, she just missed out, and I think it has to do a little bit with fatigue, and maybe when they joined and came back, that the running that Brandt was, the pace what Brandt was lying on them, that was maybe also a little bit too much asked. But yeah, it was a bit weird to see that she lost so much time while the sand must be her strongest part.
Well, Brandt then started closing that gap, and she did that mostly alongside of the coast. And what I noticed was that she was taking a different line there than Betsema, because you could see that you had the shore and they were riding along that because the sand was harder there. But at some point they needed to cross over back towards the parkour higher up on the stand, and you could see it was really a question, when do I cross over? Betsema continued alongside the shore longer for a couple of more meters, whilst Betsema and Brandt started this shortcut up a bit earlier, so that meant they had to run, but it meant they also had to take less meters, and they took like 3 seconds there. And you might think 3 seconds, it's just 3 seconds, but if you take 3 seconds, run a bit faster, like 2 seconds, that's 5 seconds, and on that gap of 15 seconds that Betsema had, that was already one of the third of the gap gone. But Brandt then started making mistakes. I already said it, she wasn't riding good there. She just got stuck in the sand pretty fast and then lost all the time she made up again. And Tom, for you is the question, you're the man of our tire threads. What do you think? Do you think that her tire thread had something to do with that?
Yeah, potentially. Well, Brandt was running the small bird tread today, which is a bit like a baby Limus almost. It's more of a mud tire than a sand tire. And yeah, that obviously added much more resistance, making the sand quite a bit harder to ride. Obviously, though, it paid off in the hippodrome section. You could see Brandt was much stronger, had more grip in the corners. And yeah, I think it really was interesting to see this tread, but yeah, it seemed to be clearing quite well, so there was no mud getting stuck in the tread at least. But yeah, still a bit more grip in the sands. Not really what you're looking for on a course like this today.
Let's take it a bit to an extreme. You could compare potentially the baby bird tires that she was riding on to the tires of a tractor compared to more slick tires with the others were riding, for which meant it was tougher for her to get through the sand.
Indeed, yeah, certainly.
Okay, so at that point then we had 3 leaders, and then who were you reckoning had the best chances to win?
Yeah, I think that Brandt looked strong, but she was also suffering a little bit, and she was not comfortable. So it was very weird because of Vorst. Actually, I was thinking that Vorst, was in a very good position. Then she obviously had that crash, and then it was again looking like Betsema was going to steal the win. But I don't know. Betsema really was not good at the last part of the race. I don't know what happened, but she wasn't taking initiative. She wasn't going first into the sand section. She actually lost time. So that was a bit weird. So if you would say two laps before the end of the race, I would have said Betsema, but it was in the end Brandt that was just so strong. And obviously in the last lap, of course, there was a little bit of controversy with the pass she had on Vorst, but in the end was the one that won the race.
At that point that they come together, I'm thinking that André Worst is doing something I haven't seen her do basically since Koppenberg, riding really impressively, actually riding phenomenal sand sections as well. Unfortunately, next sand section she actually crashes, and that all kind of goes out the window, although she is able to close it again. I think from that crash, it just in my mind, it kind of made her more human again, and I was like, yeah, it probably still a little bit missing. I just don't think Betsema has the killer instinct to win, so she immediately basically had to go again, because if it's last 2 laps, Brandt is gonna win, and that is really from that moment on the scenario that I saw happening.
And a bit later on, it was Brandt who went into the pit for a new bike. Tom, what did you think about this? Was it purely to have a clean bike, or did she potentially change something about the pressure in her tires or the tire thread? And did you think that changing there was worth the risk, because she was 5 seconds behind then?
Well, I think it's a tough to call, but yeah, she managed to close the gap back again. Worst and Betsema were really pushing on when she went in the pits, so they tried to open the gap there, but she was able to close it down. And yeah, there was a lot of running on this course. So heavy muddy bike, obviously when you're running for a long time. Yeah, a lighter, cleaner bike's nicer for you to run with, and makes you can run easier, faster. So I think it really was a feat of endurance on the course today. They weren't kind of hopping off and running for 5 seconds at full gas. It was a real kind of endurance, slog through the sand and then get off and run for a good 30 seconds. And then back through the sand again and up the bridge. It was a really tough course out there. So yeah, a lighter bike certainly helps. And yeah, going back to the tyre tread, obviously the more grippy tyre clogs up a bit more. So yeah, it could be tactical to get a bit of mud off the tyres as well. So yeah, I think seemingly it would be she came out on top. So good decision there.
Then when we were going into the last lap, I was thinking Betsema now needs to take the lead, but I already also felt coming that she wasn't going to do that, because that's kind of how Betsema is. As soon as there is a crucial moment where you need to be in front, she usually isn't. Yes, Issam already mentioned it, she wasn't having the upper hand in the sand anymore as she had in the first lap. Nevertheless, it still would have been her best shot, especially considering how fast the Vorst was riding through the sand at that point.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was the case, and I think for Betsema, before the race started, I was like, if she really wants to win, the only way for her to win is if she is alone and finishes alone. It comes alone in the last few laps, because, like you said, she doesn't have the finish you need to have in such a race, especially at the last lap. You need to be a little bit dirty sometimes. You need to be a little bit tactical in some occasions, and especially at those moments, if you are in front, you gain a second in that descent because you won't be close to each other. If you made a mistake or whatever, you lose 2 seconds, but then you gain the second and you're lost. So it's it was not the smartest move to be the last one going into descent, and I mean it showed that she wasn't a potential world champion.
And what did you think about the comments Betsema made afterwards? She said, I quote, "I'm standing here with mixed feelings, but the feeling that currently has the upper hand is the pride feeling that I take my first medal at a world championship."
Yeah, I mean, you can be happy with that, but I mean that probably just shows the way she was looking into this race. She was probably looking into the race to win, but also in her interviews and stuff, there was not that really fighting mentality of really willing to win, a little bit of grinta in a way. She was kind of looking into the race like it was a normal race, and I think that's the wrong mentality in my opinion. But everybody has their own approach of a race, and that's her approach, so we have to I guess accept it. And if I was Mette Penning, I wouldn't be happy.
I think this is an unacceptable way of looking at it right after the race. She is the third best person in cyclocross at the moment. She has been this season, and one of the 2 people that's better than her wasn't Annemarie Worst. It simply wasn't this year, and thus she shouldn't be happy with a third place behind Annemarie Worst, and you should always be aiming a little higher. Like I could understand the feeling of content if it was Brandt and Alvarado beating her and she didn't have the first lap that she had, but the fact is it wasn't Alvarado that beat her, so she should at least be aiming for second today. And I think with that pretty good lead after the first lap, she should be aiming for a win, a world title. That should be the only thing that she could be happy with. I can understand that after a few days you can get to grips with it and you can start to feel more happy about it, but after the race it just shouldn't be.
I don't know if I would go that far, but if you are Betsema, you need to be realistic. You're 28 years old. There's not going to be a ton of chances. Maybe something like 5 to 6 years that you're still going to compete. The younger generation is going to become stronger and stronger, so you need to step up. And if you then look at the parkour, she's probably never going to find a parkour that suits her better either, because today was a lot of sand, and if you look at the next 5 years, the World Championships have already been arranged at different locations, and all those venues barely have sand in it. So it's hard to see for Betsema, especially because she was happy. I think that if you end third here, like Twan said, in a couple of days, you should be happy with it. But today you should be fuming at yourself on the podium, especially because you led with 15 seconds. 15 seconds, that's a lot. You should be gutted, just like Vorst was last year, and then start on working on a plan to become world champion next year, and I don't see that happen. Well, with Betsema out of contention after that, we had the battle between two, Vorst and Brandt, and that ended in quite an anticlimax because there was an incident there. Tom, can you tell us what happened and what you thought about that?
Well, personally, I think certainly it was a racing incident, let's say. I don't think there was any malicious intent. And I think by the way the riders acted after the finish line, yeah, I don't think Worst saw anything wrong with it. So just basically there'd already been quite a few slips and slides with a few little crashes. And it was in the hippodrome, a really muddy section. And the riders were kind of crossing over each other's lines, trying to find the grass, the grippier sections. Brandt went for an outside line, and then which forced her to take the inside coming into the next corner, whereas Worst had gone for the opposite. So she was looking to kind of cut back across, and Brandt just snuck in through the gap, forced her out a bit wider, and ultimately Worst slipped off. And yeah, it was only about a minute from the finish, and it cost her 5 seconds, and yeah, that was it. Race over, effectively. And that led Brandt just to ride away and take the win. Worst did look like she was coming back very slightly, but she had another little slip, and yeah, it was second in the end for her.
Well, I mean, when I looked at it first, I have to be honest, I didn't think it was a racing incident. I think it was a push. Looking back at it, I think it was Vorst was really positioning her wheel kinda in an angle, and then you're a little bit more vulnerable for a push. I think what Brandt did there was just going in a gap that was there. It happens a lot in cyclocross, and it happens there as well. But then now in the last lap in the spotlights, so there is nothing wrong with such a move. It's just you can do it differently, but it happened, and it doesn't do anything away from the fact that Brandt is the world champion, and very deserved, of course.
Let's run down the entire top 10 then. Behind the podium of Brandt, Vorst and Betsema, we found Clara Honsinger, who rode a solid race, ending in front of Jara Kastelein, who also overperformed. Then defending world champion Alvarado ended in 6th. Evie Richards in 7th in front of Sanne Kant, Elisabeth Brandau and Christine Margerus. We won't go into this too long considering the time we've already spent, but we need to talk about the defending champion Alvarado. Not her race, and I blame Issam for that.
Yeah, that was bad. I mean, first turn, she couldn't give me a little bit more time of hoping that it wouldn't happen, but it was the first corner of the race that she crashed, and yeah, if we put my luck aside and just look at the corner in particular, it was a little bit her mistake. I think the ideal line was outside on the grass, and she just took the inside line where it was a lot of mud and went in too deep and lost the bike and crashed.
I think Alvarado was maybe a bit over ambitious there, and it certainly shows you can't win your race there, but you can definitely lose it, and she lost it. Her crash also took out Sanne Kant. She fell in it was cold. There was a lot of water there. She got cold because of that. Could think it also played a factor for Alvarado, but especially for Kant. After that, she gave an interview at Sporza, and she was almost suffering a hypothermia there.
And the interviewer keeping it limited to one question, immediately basically sending her through to get close. I think she even asked to do it, and that there was no problem there. Just shows you how bad it must have been.
Yeah, I think it was a really unlucky crash. Obviously, coming in the first corner in the lead, it's a great start, and then suddenly you're set to the back. It's a really changing the mindset. You'll be cold as well. You need to get focused and try and pick off as many riders as you can. But yeah, it suddenly changes your race drastically, and yeah, I think it really affected her this time. So yeah, that was really unfortunate for her.
To keep this podcast once again a bit of a normal length, it will be a bit longer, but we won't go in too long. We could talk about this for hours and hours, but we'll now talk about the men's under-23 race, and Issam will tell us exactly what happened there.
Yes, the men's under 23, they were the first to start. It was an okay start still till they reached the bridge after this first 2-3 corners, and that bridge led to a few guys being hauled up, but the leading pack was getting away. There were no issues there. It was Beat Kamp and Pim Ronhaar who were having a very good start, leading the guys into the descent of the bridge, into the first passage of the descent, which went all right. Van de Putte showed himself in the first lap, but I can already tell you that he is not going to play a role in this race for more than only that lap. In the second lap, we had a little bit of Belgium-Netherlands going on there, but Pim Ronhaar was looking very strong, and Beat Kamp was struggling a little bit. Had a bike change, was not really looking that sharp as well. Was it the season that was so long? We don't know. But it were indeed the Belgian guys that were also there with Kielich, Toon van der Bos as well, who was looking very good. And in lap 3, it was Pim Ronhaar who said, it's enough, I have to go. Maybe it's my chance to win this championship since Kamp is not here. You know, he tried to get away and went away, and it was behind him Kielich and Toon van der Bos that tried to bridge the gap, and a revived Beat Kamp who was trying to close down to these guys. Kamp was actually able to join the guys. We could see that Toon van der Bos was struggling a lot. Kielich was really trying to get closer to Ronhaar, but was not really able to do so. Then we had a crash of Kamp actually on the stairs that were very slippery today. It also took out Thomas Main in the first lap. Kamp managed to go ahead and try to close back to Kielich, who was now joined by Verstringen. Emil, who was doing an amazing job today for the Belgium squad. Kamp actually managed to get back, but ahead it was still Pim Ronhaar who was leading, and Pim Ronhaar was able to get the rainbow jersey and win for the men's under 23, and it was in second Beat Kamp, who makes it the 1-2 for the Netherlands, and it was third place for a very, very strong Timo Kielich.
I don't want to discredit the win of Pim Ronhaar, but it was Beat Kamp, his teammate, who came here as the top favorite. What do you guys think was the reason that he couldn't fulfill his favorite role and go on and win the title?
I think that his first lap was not really the best, apart from like his first part till the bridge. When they went on the sand, it was all looking pretty good, and all of a sudden he was losing a little bit of terrain. I said it already, but I think that his long season might have played a big role in this as well. He did a lot of races with the elite riders, and also didn't save a lot in those races. He really tried to give it all in all races, and you know that is what makes a rider good. But for a race like this in a World Championships is of course a whole different story. And I think what showed that he was probably the strongest today was his last lap, where he was 5 seconds faster than his fastest lap already. I think, in my opinion, that shows that he was on such a parcours which is very demanding, very, very tough to do. It's very strong performance, and I think it just showed that maybe the second guy was the strongest today.
Twan, Ronhaar, he was leading the race, and behind him there was a group of chasers which had two of his teammates in it. Beat Kamp was there. Beat Kamp, also a Dutch rider, so it does make sense that he doesn't chase. But also Toon van der Bos, he refused to take over from his countryman Timo Kielich. Do you think that he was really tired, as he said, or do you think that he got clear instructions from Jurgen Mettepenningen?
I think it was a combination of both. It's just very smart to sit on a wheel on asphalt straight. You know you're not going to get dropped anyway. There is no real technical sections coming up. You can probably sit there for a little bit. So I think he's just doing everything right there. Whether that's actually team play or not, I don't know. It probably is a little.
And about Ronhaar, he came here outside of the spotlights. Spotlights were in Ryan Kamp. He was only mentioned 1 or 2 times. Do you think that he himself expected the win?
I think he knew it was doable, but yeah, he probably was coming in aiming for a win, but knowing he was not probably the best rider on paper coming into today. But yeah, on a course like this, anything can happen, and he showed himself well in Massam before actually. I believe he's won in Coxrider as a junior perhaps, and yeah, I think he's shown that he can do it. In the European Champs as well, he was really strong in the under-23 race, but kind of faded as the race went on a bit. But you got to remember he's still younger than Ryan Kamp, so these longer races over the season have probably helped him build on his endurance since the Euros. And yeah, he rode a great race today, and certainly one to watch for the future in the elite category in years to come as well.
And what did you think about that crash of Ryan Kamp on the stairs? Because it looked nasty.
Yeah, well, those stairs looked pretty treacherous, if I'm honest with you. And yeah, it took out Thomas Main as well. He had a really nasty fall in the first lap, and that really took him out of contention. I think he was probably sitting 4th within kind of a couple of seconds of the lead then. And yeah, the steps, like both Main and Kamp, the legs slipped out from underneath them and then fell off the side of the stairs, and then they were kind of dangling. And yeah, it really was... I don't see the need for those stairs in my opinion. There was enough running as it is. And certainly it looked more like a kind of wooden structure almost, and then really slippy in the rain, and they certainly needed some matting or covering over those stairs.
But perhaps it was just our friend Issam who cursed those stairs, because it was once again 2 of his picks that crashed out there.
Yeah. The main crash, by the way, was pretty nasty. It was because he didn't only like slip, but he was also stuck on the side part of the fence, and you know he was really trying to get out of there, but it took him a while, and from there on his race was obviously over after already having a first crash. But it's, in my opinion, it's a bit weird to see that not only the stairs there, that they were not having any cover or something, because it was just literally wood. If you have a little bit of experience with rain and wood, it's not really fun to walk on those things. And especially if you walk on them and you put like force a little bit on the side, you just slip. And that's basically what happened to Kamp, and that's basically what happened to Main. And I think apart from that, also the bridge what you had in the first like 3 corners was also pathetic to put there, especially for the start, because it adds just a lot of drama, which is unnecessary in my opinion, and a lot of people lose time there.
During the race, Jens Dekker tweeted about those stairs, the ones where Kamp and Main fell, and apparently according to the UCI rules, these shouldn't have been approved, as there should be covers over them. So it's really strange to see it like this, the organization or the UCI doing something wrong here.
Well, to round off this episode, we'll run down the top 10. It was Ronhaar in front of Kamp, Kielich, Verstringen, Toon van der Bos, Mees Hendricks, Anton Ferdinand, Niels van der Putten, Ben Turner and Tim van Dijken. Twan, could you tell us something about the race of Niels van der Putten?
He got off to a pretty quick start there. Unfortunately for him, he crashed and he wasn't quite able to return to the front of the race, and was able to ride it out into a decent but certainly not amazing 8th place.
Does someone think that maybe the lack of racing he had because of an injury hampered him today?
Yeah, so I think, he obviously broke his back in Antwerp. So he was out for the month of December, really. So yeah, coming back, you're obviously some time off a bike, and yeah, it's gonna affect you. You're gonna miss the training. You're gonna miss that race sharpness. So I think he'll be disappointed with his performance today, but also realistic that maybe with the injuries, you cannot be expecting to be performing on the highest level so soon after some time off.
Then I think we had it for this episode of the Cyclocross Social Podcast. A great day of racing, loads of spectacular things happening, and hopefully we'll have 2 exciting races tomorrow. I would like to thank all of you for being here today.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
Thanks for having me on.
And with that said, we will round off this episode. I would like to thank all of you for listening, and hopefully you'll join us tomorrow when we have a new podcast about the men's race and the women's under 23 race. Thank you guys. Goodbye.